The room shimmered in gold. Flashbulbs, laughter, champagne whispering against crystal. And then, slicing through the noise like a blade. Ma'am, this section's for real investors, not guests. Heads turned. A ripple of laughter followed, soft but sharp enough to slice. Janelle Rhodes didn't move. Her posture stayed still, the kind of stillness that comes from someone who's lived this moment before. She stood at the edge of the runway, a black silk dress tracing her frame, simple gold hoops in her ears. No diamonds, no entourage, just calm. But to the room, she looked like an intruder. A woman at the check-in desk leaned toward her colleague. Did she say Rhodes? Cute, same last name as the sponsor. Her colleague chuckled. Yeah, right. And I'm Beyoncé. The laughter swelled again, nervous, complicit, familiar. A security guard stepped forward, shifting his weight like he'd just been handed permission to humiliate someone. Ma'am, this area is reserved. You'll need to move behind the rope. Janelle looked at him for a moment, measured, unflinching, then simply said, Is it? Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now back to Janelle. The guard frowned, unsure how to read that calm. A PR intern nearby whispered, She's bold. I'll give her that. Bold? Another laughed. Delusional. Across the stage, the event host, white tuxedo, microphone in hand, caught the tension and smirked. Let's keep the front row clear, folks. We wouldn't want to mistake fans for funders. The crowd chuckled. It landed exactly how he wanted. And it hit Janelle too, but differently. Not as a wound. As confirmation, she'd come here for this exact moment. 12 hours earlier, her assistant had asked, Are you sure you want to go alone? They won't recognize you without the team. And Janelle had replied, That's the point. Now, as cameras flashed, she let the humiliation unfold. Every smirk, every whisper, every darted glance. They were writing their own script. A young designer passed by, her voice low but cruel. She really thought she could just walk in? You can smell when someone doesn't belong. Janelle exhaled slowly. The scent of expensive perfume filled the air. Vanilla, leather, power. The kind that announces privilege before words ever do. She didn't flinch. She didn't speak. She only watched as the people who owed her careers mocked her like an outsider. From the corner, Malik, the lighting assistant, froze mid-step, watching the exchange with quiet unease. He'd seen that name before. Rhodes. At the top of every sponsorship email. He wanted to say something, but his supervisor shot him a warning look. Don't. The host gestured toward her again. Security, please help our guest find her seat, outside the sponsor section. The audience clapped politely, as if cruelty were part of the show. Janelle turned slightly toward the lights, her face half lit, half shadowed. Her voice, when it came, was soft but steady. Maybe learn who signs your paychecks, before you start laughing. It wasn't loud enough for the crowd, but Malik heard it, and he would remember that line long after the lights went down. The music swelled again, and the first model stepped onto the runway. But for everyone near the front row, the real show had already begun. An hour earlier, the same woman everyone mocked had walked into the Met Pavilion through the service entrance. No cameras, no entourage, just the soft click of her heels against the concrete floor. Janelle Rhodes believed in walking unseen before being seen. That morning, she'd left her penthouse in Tribeca, wearing the same dress she'd worn 5 years ago when her company signed its first $20 million fashion partnership. A simple black silk slip, timeless, unbranded, silent power. Back then, no one believed a black woman from Atlanta could build a production empire big enough to bankroll New York Fashion Week. Now, she owned the very lighting rigs, digital billboards, and sponsorship rights that tonight's organizers depended on. But inside the pavilion, none of that mattered. To them, she was just another face. A backstage coordinator glanced up as Janelle entered. Deliveries are on the other side, he said, not even making eye contact. Janelle smiled softly. Noted. She kept walking. She could have corrected him, could have said, I sign your checks, sweetheart, but she didn't. There was no need to announce power. Real power waited. It watched. It listened. She paused near a rack of glittering gowns. The fabric shimmered like liquid light. Around her, stylist rushed by, barking orders. One brushed past her shoulder, muttering, "Watch it, lady." Janelle stepped aside, eyes calm, voice low. "Always." Across the room, Leah, her executive assistant, stood disguised as a coordinator, headset on, clipboard in hand. She gave Janelle a quick nod, subtle enough that no one noticed. They had planned this for weeks. Janelle had one goal tonight: to see unfiltered how her own industry treated those who didn't fit their image of power. At 7:23 p.m., she took a seat near the entrance. No one offered her champagne. No one asked her name. People simply walked around her, their glances thinly veiled with judgment. A memory surfaced. Milan, 2013. She'd been a junior producer back then, standing outside a showroom in the rain, holding fabric swatches while her white colleagues went inside. The guard had told her, "Assistants wait outside." She did. For 3 hours. She never forgot how it felt to be invisible in a space she helped create. Now, 12 years later, she was back in that same silence. Why? But this time, it was deliberate. A journalist brushed by, whispering to another, "Who's she?" "Doesn't look press or buyer." The other replied, "Probably trying to sneak a selfie for Instagram." Janelle's phone buzzed once. Leah's voice came through her earpiece. "Everything's live. Their PR servers just logged you as a guest, not a partner." "Perfect," Janelle said quietly. "Let them underestimate me properly." The lights dimmed as the audience took their seats. The fashion director, tall, sleek, confident, swept through the aisle in a white suit. "Everyone important up front," she called. Then, catching Janelle's plain dress, she smiled politely but dismissively. "Ma'am, general admission's that way." Janelle looked up at her, composed. "You sure?" The woman's smile sharpened. "Quite," Janelle nodded once. "Then you might want to double-check your guest list." But the director was already gone. From across the runway, Malik adjusted a spotlight. He noticed how the beam landed on Janelle's seat, isolating her in a faint halo of light. A quiet irony that would become poetic later. The show began. Music thumped through the speakers, the kind designed to make people forget themselves. Models glided down the runway, heads high, dresses sculpted like armor. Cameras flashed. The audience cheered. And through it all, Janelle sat perfectly still, watching the same industry that fed off her funding, her labor, her brilliance, laugh in her face. But beneath that calm exterior, something shifted. The old wound stirred, not with pain, but precision. This wasn't humiliation. It was evidence. She whispered into her mic, "Leah, timestamp everything from the moment they laughed." Leah replied instantly, "Logged." The show's director caught Janelle's gaze again, frowning slightly as if sensing something she couldn't name. Janelle simply smiled. The kind of smile that didn't say, "I forgive you." It said, "I see you." No one in the room knew that before midnight. Every contract tied to Rhodes Global Studios. Every sponsorship, every advertising slot, every lighting deal would vanish from their balance sheets. For now, Janelle just sat in the quiet, waiting for them to finish the show she had paid for. The silence wasn't surrender. It was set up. By the second act of the show, the room had turned electric. Camera flashes pulsed like lightning across a sea of sequins and champagne smiles. And right in the middle of it, Janelle Rhodes sat still, uninvited, unnoticed, and increasingly unwelcome. A model brushed past her seat, murmuring under her breath, "Security's slippin'." "She's still here?" The PR assistant beside her chuckled, "Relax. She's probably someone's +1 who got lost." Their laughter folded into the bass line of the music, seamless and cruel. From the back of the room, Malik, the lighting tech, could see it all. The tension around her chair looked physical now, like heat warping the air. He whispered to his colleague, "That woman's on the main sponsor list." The colleague rolled his eyes. "Man, don't get involved. People like that don't belong in this room unless they're serving drinks." The lights shifted to a gold wash. The designer herself, Kira Beaumont, tall, blonde, dressed in sculpted ivory, floated toward the runway edge. She spotted Janelle instantly. Her expression tightened, polite but poisonous. "Excuse me," she said, smiling for the cameras. "This section's reserved for board guests." Janelle turned slightly. "Board guests?" "Yes," Kira replied, her tone sugar wrapped around steel. "The people who make this show possible." Janelle's lips curved just a little. "That's good to know." Kira didn't like that answer. She gestured subtly to a nearby staffer, a man with a clipboard and an earpiece, who leaned down and whispered, "We'll handle it." A few moments later, a floor manager in a dark suit appeared beside Janelle's chair. "Ma'am," he began, rehearsed and restrained, "we need to verify your credentials." "My credentials?" "Yes, for this section. May I see your invitation?" Janelle glanced at the folded ticket on her lap. Blank, embossed, anonymous. No name, she'd designed it that way. She handed it over. The manager flipped it open, frowned. "There's no name printed here." Janelle nodded. "Correct. Then how did you—" "I bought the section," she said quietly. "Does that count?" He blinked, unsure if he'd heard her right. "Excuse me?" Before he could finish, Kira's assistant leaned in and whispered, "She's joking. Just escort her out discreetly, please." Malik flinched from across the room. He could see her face now, lit by the runway lights. Still calm, but her eyes sharper, like glass held to fire. The floor manager hesitated. "Ma'am, if you could please step—" "Are you sure?" Janelle interrupted. "You want to make a scene in front of your investors?" That one word, investors, hit him wrong. He faltered, looked toward Kira. Kira tilted her chin, confident. "Do your job." So he reached out, not to touch, just to gesture, but his hand hovered a second too long. A camera from the press pit turned at the exact moment. Flash, click. A frozen image of bias about to unfold. The audience began to murmur. Phones lifted. Someone whispered, "Is she being removed?" Another voice, sharper, "Who is she?" Janelle said nothing. She let the whisper swell. Let the eyes turn. Let the moment gather weight. She'd seen this performance before. The polite embarrassment, the visible discomfort when privilege is forced to look at itself. It played the same in every city. Paris, Milan, New York, same tone, same look, same silence before the fall. Then from the back, Malik took one step forward. He couldn't help it. His voice was low, but it carried. "She's on the top sponsor list," he said. "First name on it." The room stilled. Kira turned sharply, her smile cracking. "Excuse me?" Malik swallowed. "Janelle Rhodes. Rhodes Global Studios. That's her." For half a second, no one moved. Then the PR lead laughed, enforced, brittle. "That's absurd. Ms. Rhodes would never just walk in here alone." "Don't be ridiculous." The crowd chuckled again, eager to believe it. The sound covered their discomfort like perfume over rot. Janelle didn't confirm or deny it. She simply said, "You'd be amazed what people will do when they want to see the truth up close." The floor manager lowered his hand. Kira exhaled, forcing composure. "Fine," she said. "Let her stay for now, but move her to the end of the row." The message was clear. Know your place. Janelle stood, slow and deliberate. Her movement alone silenced a few whispers. She didn't argue, didn't plead. She just stepped to the end of the row, her heels echoing louder than the bass. And as she sat down again, her voice barely above a whisper, she spoke into her mic. "Leah, mark this moment. The show's turning ugly." Leah's reply came back calm and cold. Logged. Protocol Vogue ready on standby. Up front, Kira smiled for the cameras again, but the tension in the room didn't fade. It lingered like the pause before thunder. The lights shifted again, white beams cutting across the catwalk like swords. A model spun in metallic silk, the crowd clapped, and in that flood of applause, something smaller but sharper began to stir. Malik couldn't look away from her. From his booth above the stage, he could see every flicker of emotion, every flash of contempt directed toward the woman in the simple black dress. He'd been on this crew for 4 seasons, and he'd seen arrogance before. But this was different. This was contempt-wearing couture. His supervisor barked into the headset, "Spot 4, bring it up on Kira, not the guest." Malik hesitated. His finger hovered over the switch. "But she's sitting in the sponsor row," he muttered. The reply came fast and hard. "Don't think. Just follow direction." He lowered his gaze, but guilt crawled through his chest. He'd seen the name Rhodes Global stamped on every light fixture, every contract, every power cable that fed this entire production. And now the same woman behind that name was being pushed to the edge of her own creation. Down on the floor, Janelle sat quietly, back straight, gaze fixed on the runway. But her mind wasn't there. It drifted 13 years back into a moment that looked almost identical. She was 27, standing outside a London gala she'd been invited to produce. A man at the door looked her up and down and said, "Staff enter through the back." She had smiled then, too, the same way she was smiling now, calm, polite, but carrying fire behind her teeth. A sudden click pulled her back to the present. A camera had turned toward her. A gossip blogger, bright red lipstick, angled her phone for a story. "She's not on the list," the woman whispered, "but she's acting like she owns the place." The irony made Janelle almost laugh. At the far end of the runway, Malik took a slow breath and tapped his earpiece. "Leah?" he whispered, static, then a soft voice. "Yes?" He hesitated. "Do you work for her?" A pause. Then quietly, "Stay ready." The next model missed her cue, just half a beat late, but the shift was enough to break the rhythm. The director snapped her fingers, frustrated. "What's going on with the lights?" "Nothing," Malik said quickly, his hand shaking. "Just a recalibration." But the truth was he'd done it intentionally. He dimmed the center light by 2%, just enough so the spotlight no longer favored the runway. It landed instead on Janelle. A soft murmur rolled through the audience. People looked her way again. It wasn't mockery this time, it was curiosity. "Who is she?" someone whispered. "I don't know. But she's composed." The PR assistant noticed too. "Turn that light off her," she hissed into her mic. But Malik didn't. He couldn't. Because in that glow, for the first time, the whole room saw her clearly. Not a bystander. Not a mistake. A presence. Kira, standing near the backstage curtain, felt it too. She frowned, scanning the control booth, realizing something had shifted in the balance. "Bring it back on me," she ordered. "Working on it," came a nervous voice. But the system lagged, like the universe itself refused to obey arrogance tonight. Down front, Janelle glanced toward the balcony and met Malik's eyes for a fraction of a second. A silent exchange, recognition, alignment. In the headset, Leah's voice came again, calm and measured. "We've confirmed press accounts are live. Protocol Vogue is armed and time-stamped." "Copy," Janelle whispered. From the corner of her eye, she saw the fashion director pacing. "Get her out of the frame," the woman snapped to security. "This is a professional event, not a protest." The guard hesitated. He'd been embarrassed once already. "Do it quietly," she insisted. Malik's chest tightened. He looked down again, watched as the guard began walking toward her, slow, cautious, as if aware that the eyes of the room had shifted. He spoke under his breath into his mic. "Leah, they're moving on her." "I see it," Leah replied. "Keep recording." And then it happened, something small, almost invisible but powerful. A young woman from the PR table stood up. Her name was Naomi Fields, 25, first month on the job. Her voice trembled, but she spoke anyway. "Wait. Don't." The room went still. She turned toward the director. "She's on the sponsor list. I saw it earlier when I printed the tags." Silence. Even the music seemed to lower itself as if listening. The director laughed nervously. "You must be mistaken." Naomi shook her head. "No, ma'am. I'm not." Kira's smile cracked for real this time. "Sit down, please. That's not your concern." But Naomi didn't move. "It is now." Gasps rippled through the rows. Someone whispered, "She's defending her." Someone else said, "Good for her." Malik smiled faintly from above. The witness had awakened, and down below, Janelle didn't even turn her head. She just whispered almost to herself, "The room's waking up." The guard froze mid-step, uncertain which order to follow. The lights trembled slightly as Malik steadied his hand. And for the first time all night, the air inside the pavilion didn't feel owned by privilege anymore. It felt charged, with truth. The song changed, bass deeper, darker. The models stepped faster, their movements sharper, their eyes hollow with focus. It should have been about fashion, about art and light. But no one was watching the clothes anymore. Every head in the front row had tilted toward Janelle Rhodes. The director's voice cut through her headset. "Security now. I want her out before press notices." The guard hesitated. The crowd was whispering again, and cameras were already turning toward the tension. Kira Beaumont, still smiling for photographers, whispered through her perfect teeth, "Do your job." He moved. Slow. Careful. "Ma'am," he said, "I'm going to have to ask you to step outside." Janelle didn't even look at him. "For what?" "Protocol," he replied, shifting on his feet. "This section's for partners." Her gaze lifted toward him, calm as marble. Then you're enforcing the wrong protocol. But before he could respond, Kira's assistant, nervous, angry, snapped, "You heard her. Remove her." He reached for Janelle's arm, and that's when the entire atmosphere cracked. Gasps, flashes, phones rose instantly. The guard's hand froze mid-air, barely grazing her sleeve, but it was enough. The moment someone touches a woman who doesn't flinch, the power in the room shifts forever. Janelle's voice was quiet, deliberate. "You don't touch me. Not here, not ever." The words hit like glass breaking. Leah's voice came through the earpiece, steady but urgent. "Janelle, do you want me to activate the feed?" Janelle's answer was calm. "Not yet. Let them finish showing who they are." Up in the booth, Malik's hands were shaking. He could see the guard's hand retreat. The director's face pale under the stage lights, the designer frozen mid-smile. He whispered into his mic, "They touched her." Leah replied, "Copy. Logged." The room hummed with a strange static, anger, confusion, shame. Kira tried to mask her panic with a brittle laugh. "Let's keep the energy positive, people. No need for drama." But the word drama backfired. The crowd laughed nervously again, unsure whose side to take. Janelle slowly stood. Her movement was measured, deliberate, cinematic, and for a heartbeat even the music faltered, like the sound system itself was holding its breath. "I came here," she said softly, "to watch what I built." The PR assistant scoffed. "Built you?" That laugh, light, empty, dismissive, triggered something old in her bones. And just like that, the years folded back. She was 19 again, standing in a student fashion showcase at Spelman College. Her team had spent months sewing the final collection, but when the judges arrived, only the white designers were invited backstage. "Too many people," they said. "We'll call you if we need you." She had waited outside the door, hands clasped, listening to the applause meant for her work. Now, decades later, the same laughter echoed across the same kind of room. Janelle blinked once, clearing the memory. Then her voice low. "Every industry hides its gate behind a smile. Tonight I'm done knocking." The words didn't need volume. They had weight. Kira stepped forward, her voice shaking despite her smile. "This event represents global brands. Please don't embarrass yourself." Janelle tilted her head slightly. "You already did that for me." Malik mouthed "damn" from the booth. Naomi, still standing at the PR table, looked ready to cry. Not from fear, but pride. Security took another step forward. Cameras flashed like lightning strikes. Leah's voice came through again. "Janelle, this is escalation. Are we green?" Janelle's eyes stayed locked on Kira. "Almost." Kira crossed her arms. "You've made your point." Janelle smiled softly. "Not yet. My point hasn't even started." The guard reached for her again, more forcefully this time. That's when Malik, unable to watch in silence anymore, hit the controls. A spotlight exploded from above, bright, blinding, aimed squarely at Janelle. Gasps rippled. She stood under that light like a statue carved out of calm defiance. For a full 3 seconds, no one moved. Naomi whispered, "That's her. That's the founder." Someone nearby echoed, "The sponsor?" No way. But the energy had shifted again, this time irreversibly. Janelle lifted her phone. "Leah," she said, voice barely above the hum of whispers. "Activate the feed." And with that, the air filled with a soft chime. All the LED panels surrounding the runway flickered once, then again, before dissolving into black. Every logo, every brand, every image tied to Kira Beaumont's empire, gone. The lights dimmed. The crowd fell silent. And standing in the center of the room, Janelle Rhodes whispered one final line before the darkness swallowed them all. "You wanted a show. Now watch what happens when the lights belong to me." The pavilion fell into a trembling silence. Only the sound of phones buzzing filled the dark. Notifications, confusion, panic. A few seconds later, the emergency lights hummed to life, washing the room in soft amber. Models froze mid-stride. Guests craned their necks. The massive digital screens that once glittered with brand logos now pulsed with one message in stark white text. "System update in progress. Rhodes Global Network." The name alone sent a current through the room. Kira Beaumont turned sharply to her tech director. "What is this?" "Get it off the screens!" He was already typing frantically. "I'm trying," the feed's overridden. "We've lost access." Janelle's voice broke the silence, low, measured, certain. That's because it isn't your system. People turned. Every camera, every phone, every gaze fixed on her. She stood at the center of the runway now, haloed by the dim light, calm as a storm eye. Who is she? Someone whispered. Naomi answered softly. The woman who owns the lights. Kira stepped forward, her smile faltering. This is absurd. You can't just hijack, but her mic cut out mid-sentence. Every sound system in the pavilion flickered, then went silent. Only Janelle's voice came through, clear and controlled, through the speakers she paid for. Protocol Vogue. Stage 2 confirmed. On cue, the backstage lights came on in sequence. Leah appeared from the side curtain, phone in hand, headset gleaming under the glow. She walked toward Janelle, calm, professional, unstoppable. Kira's face drained of color. What is this? What are you doing? Leah didn't even look at her. Reclaiming what was borrowed, Malik, still in the control booth, muttered, Holy hell, it's real. He turned on his phone camera, recording everything from her mic. Janelle's voice flowed like silk over steel. This venue, this equipment, these screens, the live feed, all contracted under Rhodes Global Studios. Every pixel, every watt, every ounce of this spectacle runs through my company's network. The crowd shifted uneasily. A journalist up front whispered, She's not bluffing. I've covered her mergers. Rhodes Global owns half the visual tech on the East Coast. Kira laughed, brittle. You expect us to believe you'd come here alone just to cause a scene? Janelle tilted her head. I came here to see one. Leah handed her the phone. On it, a live dashboard glowed. Every partner contract tied to the show highlighted red. Janelle scrolled once, slowly. 47 active agreements, she said. Marketing, lighting, sponsorship, streaming. Let's start there. The crowd began to murmur in a low, collective unease. Kira reached for the phone, but Janelle drew back effortlessly. You laughed, Janelle said softly, eyes locked on hers. You mocked a woman whose name funds your dream. I told you earlier. Maybe learn who signs your paychecks before you start laughing. Kira froze. The weight of those earlier words returned like a slap. Janelle continued, her tone professional but deadly calm. Effective immediately. Rhodes Global suspends all partnerships with Beaumont Atelier and its affiliates. Leah tapped the phone. Instantly, an audible ping echoed from every backstage tablet. Emails, notifications, cancellations. The color drained from faces as screens lit up one by one with termination alerts. What did you just do? Kira demanded, panic slipping through her perfect tone. Janelle's reply was surgical. I didn't raise my voice. I raised the standard. The audience erupted, half in shock, half in awe. A few clapped instinctively before realizing what they were applauding. Security looked to Kira for instruction, but she said nothing. Her power had evaporated, pixel by pixel. Malik whispered to himself. This is justice in HD. Naomi stood, trembling but smiling now. She turned to the PR team. You all saw how she was treated. Tell me again who should be escorted out. No one answered. Janelle glanced toward the ceiling, her voice carrying through every hidden speaker in the hall. Leah, archive tonight's footage. Include every camera feed, every mic channel, and forward it to legal. Done, Leah replied. Full documentation secured. The light slowly began to return, not harsh, not white, but gold again, softer, dignified. Janelle stood in that glow as the entire room stared. Kira whispered, You planned this. Janelle's eyes didn't waver. No, you did. I just gave your arrogance a stage. The audience broke into hushed murmurs, disbelieving, exhilarated, unsettled. Phones rose higher, capturing what was no longer a fashion show but a reckoning. Leah leaned closer. Stage 3? Janelle's gaze swept the room, the shocked faces, the whispers, the silence that had turned to respect. Not yet, she said softly. Let them sit with what they built. The music that had once been shallow and loud returned, slower now, orchestral, like the soundtrack of consequence. And as Janelle walked off the runway, the crowd parted instinctively, the way it always does for someone who no longer needs permission to stand in her own light. The room stood suspended, somewhere between disbelief and awe. Cameras flashed without sound like silent lightning. The hum of whispers turned into a pulse that ran through the crowd. And right there, under the softened gold lights, Janelle Rhodes faced the stage she once funded, and the woman who had just lost everything. Kira's voice trembled. You can't just End contracts mid-show. That's not how this works. Janelle turned slowly toward her. You're right. That's not how you work. But it's exactly how I do. She took 2 steps forward. Each one echoed louder than the next. Every movement was deliberate, a performance of poise and control. Leah stayed behind her, tablet glowing with confirmation screens, each showing the same header. Partnership, terminated by Rhodes Global. Do you have any idea what this does to us? Kira demanded. Janelle met her gaze. I do. It reminds you that power doesn't come from a spotlight. It comes from who owns the switch. Gasps rippled. The reporters, half standing now, angled their phones closer. Every word was being recorded, live-streamed, dissected. Malik zoomed his camera in. He'd worked shows for years, but he'd never seen silence this heavy. The air itself felt like judgment. Janelle turned toward the audience. Her voice didn't rise. It descended, low, certain, commanding. You called me a guest in a room I paid for. You laughed at me in front of lights I built. You mistook simplicity for insignificance. That's your last mistake. Her words landed like a gavel. Naomi, the PR assistant who had spoken up earlier, covered her mouth, tears in her eyes. Around her, other staffers shifted uncomfortably, realizing every camera pointed at them too. Kira tried to reclaim the stage, her voice cracking beneath her veneer of confidence. Everyone, this event will continue as planned. No, Janelle interrupted. Just one word, but it flattened the air. You don't continue on what you don't own. She turned to Leah. Initiate statement broadcast. Leah tapped the screen. Instantly, every digital display, inside and outside the pavilion, flickered again. This time it wasn't a technical glitch. It was a takeover. Across every panel, Janelle's face appeared serene and steady against a black background. The live feed projected her words in real time. Her voice carried through the building's own PA system. Tonight's show was meant to celebrate creativity and inclusion. Instead, it revealed what this industry still hides. Arrogance dressed as elegance, exclusion masked as taste. My name is Janelle Rhodes, founder and CEO of Rhodes Global Studios, the company that powers this event. Its lights, its cameras, its contracts. The audience gasped. Audibly this time. Phones were raised higher, dozens of live streams going up at once. Janelle continued, her tone unwavering. I didn't come here to embarrass anyone. I came to witness the truth. And now that we've seen it, we're rewriting the terms. Literally. Behind her, Leah swiped again. Another ping echoed. The big screen split into columns showing contract IDs, sponsorship names, and the word canceled in red across each one. The journalists stood now. One shouted, Ms. Rhodes, are you saying you own this entire production? Janelle smiled faintly. Own? No, I built it. There's a difference, Kira whispered to herself, voice trembling. This isn't real. This can't be happening. But it was, and every camera in the room caught her unraveling. The models, still frozen at the edges of the runway, began to lower their heads, not in fear, but in a quiet, collective recognition. They'd lived the looks, the whispers, the dismissals too. One of them whispered, She's one of us. Malik's livestream had just hit 50,000 viewers. Comments flooded the screen. This is what power looks like. Finally, someone said it. She owns the building? Janelle looked around once more, not gloating, not angry, just resolved. You wanted diversity on your posters, not in your boardrooms. You rented the image of equality and forgot to pay the price of respect. Tonight, your credit expired. The words drew a collective exhale from the audience. Some applauded. Others just stared, guilt heavy on their faces. Leah approached quietly. All external sponsors notified. Press statement cued. Janelle nodded. Good. Then she turned one last time to Kira, who stood rigid, mascara trembling at the corners of her eyes. You could have built something real, Janelle said softly. But you chose image over integrity. Now you'll watch both disappear. And with that, she stepped off the runway. No music played. No applause followed. Only a single voice, Malik's, cut through the hush, saying what everyone was thinking. That's not revenge. That's restoration. The room didn't breathe for several seconds. Then the crowd erupted, not in cheers but in awe, as if witnessing the end of an era and the beginning of a reckoning. Janelle didn't look back. She didn't need to. The show was over, and for the first time that night, justice owned the stage. The applause that followed wasn't real applause. It was instinct. Shock. The sound people make when they can't find words fast enough to catch up with truth. The pavilion, once the temple of luxury and exclusivity, now looked like a battlefield of undone pride. Kira Beaumont stood center stage, her confidence bleeding out through her trembling smile. She tried to steady her voice for the press still recording. This is a misunderstanding. We'll resolve this privately. But her mic was still dead. Her words reached no one. Meanwhile, the massive LED wall behind her came alive again, glowing white, then crimson. Across every screen, large letters spelled it out clearly for the world to see. Beaumont Atelier. Contracts terminated. Effective immediately. Every phone in the room buzzed at once. Executives, stylists, photographers, all staring down at notifications confirming the collapse. Partnership suspended. Licensing revoked. Payments frozen. A journalist in the third row whispered, "She just wiped out their season in 30 seconds. Another replied, "She didn't destroy them. They did it to themselves." Kira looked out into the sea of faces, searching for one ally, anyone who'd step forward, anyone who'd still smile at her. No one did. Even her assistant, the one who'd called for security earlier, was backing away, whispering into her phone, "We're trending, but not how we wanted." Janelle watched quietly from the floor. She didn't gloat, didn't smirk, just observed the consequences unfold like a slow collapse of glass towers. Behind her, Leah's voice remained calm. All business. All partner feeds disconnected. Legal confirmation received. Press has the official statement draft. "Good," Janelle replied. "Send it." The room shifted again, whispers turning to murmurs, murmurs to silence. Even the models stepped off the runway, some removing their heels, some comforting each other in the shadows. Naomi, the young PR assistant, still stood near the front. Her chest was rising fast, adrenaline mixing with awe. She turned toward Janelle and said quietly, "They'll never forget this night." Janelle looked at her and nodded once. "That's the point." Malik leaned over the booth rail, filming the final moments. He could see it in her face, and that calm, that control. The storm had already passed, but she was still standing in the eye of it. Kira's composure broke at last. "This is insane," she screamed, her voice echoing across the marble hall. "You think you can humiliate me in front of the world?" Janelle's answer came steady, not cruel, just true. "No, Kira, you did that yourself. I just turned the lights back on." The phrase rippled through the crowd, a quote destined for headlines, a sentence that burned itself into the night. Two security officers approached Kira now, not Janelle. Their posture wasn't aggressive, just procedural. One spoke softly, "Ma'am, the event's concluded. We're asking everyone to clear the venue." It took Kira a second to realize they were asking her to leave. Her face went slack, mascara streaking like ink in the low light. She looked toward her own staff for backup. None came. They avoided her eyes. Phones up, filming, documenting the undoing of a dynasty. "Please don't do this," she whispered to Janelle, her voice breaking. "You can't just erase everything." Janelle took one small step closer, not unkind but unshaken. "Erase? No, I'm preserving what matters, the truth." The guards led Kira away from the runway. Her heels clattered against the tile, echoing like a metronome counting down the last beats of her career. The crowd parted without a word. Cameras followed every step. When the doors closed behind her, the silence that followed was deafening. Leah turned to Janelle. "It's done." Janelle exhaled slowly, as if releasing a weight she'd carried for years. "Not quite. It's only ending here." She looked around, the same lights that had humiliated her now painting her in quiet gold. The same stage that once belonged to exclusion now reflected equality. Reporters began shouting questions from the aisles. "Ms. Rhodes, what message do you have for the industry tonight?" She turned slightly toward them. Her tone didn't rise, but the whole room heard it. "Excellence isn't owned. It's earned. And every time you laugh at someone who doesn't fit your mold, you prove why you'll never lead it." The words landed with finality. Naomi clapped first, one sharp, decisive sound. Then Malik. Then the rest of the room followed. not as fans but as witnesses. Applause thundered through the pavilion, not for fashion, not for fame, but for the audacity of dignity. Leah leaned closer, smiling for the first time all night. Stage 3? Janelle shook her head. No. Let the silence finish the work. And with that, she walked toward the exit, every step echoing through the hall like punctuation. Behind her, the LED wall faded to black. Only one line remained glowing in the dark. Justice looks good in every light. Ban Jun Noi, Part 9, 650 Token N16. CEO da Jen Bifan Biet Chung Tok, 39 Foot Janoi. Part 9, the statement outside the Met Pavilion. The night air was cool, crisp, almost ceremonial. The hum of the city had changed. No longer just the traffic, but the echo of something larger. Dozens of reporters crowded behind velvet ropes, microphones raised, cameras rolling. And at the center of it all, Janelle Rhodes stepped into the open, calm as moonlight over glass. The last of the guests spilled out behind her. Influencers whispering into phones, executives pretending not to panic, stylists trying to look neutral. The entire fashion district seemed to pause to watch her walk past. Someone shouted, "Ms. Rhodes, was this planned?" She didn't break stride. "No," she said. But it was necessary. A second voice called out, "Why tonight?" Janelle stopped just long enough to answer. Because silence only protects those who break others, and tonight silence lost its invitation. The flashbulbs ignited again. Her words would be quoted, reposted, dissected by morning. But for the few seconds after she said them, the city itself seemed to hold its breath. Leah joined her on the steps, tablet still glowing with live updates. We're trending #1 globally. Every major outlet's covering it. Some are calling it the night fashion collapsed. Janelle smiled faintly. No, it didn't collapse. It just looked in the mirror. Behind them, through the glass walls of the pavilion, the once glorious banners of Beaumont Atelier were being taken down by venue staff. One by one, like flags of a fallen empire. Naomi approached, clutching a coffee cup she didn't remember buying. Her voice shook. "Ma'am, I just wanted to say thank you. For not yelling. For not becoming them." Janelle turned, her eyes soft. Never meet cruelty on its level. You rise and it drowns itself trying to reach you. Malik came down the steps next, camera still recording. "People are calling it a revolution, Ms. Rhodes. The way you handled it, that's history." Janelle looked at him amused. "No, Malik, that's accountability. History is what we build next." A gust of wind moved through the plaza, scattering confetti from the earlier celebration. Gold flakes fluttered across the streetlights, catching against Janelle's hair. For a moment, she looked less like a CEO and more like a monument, not because of what she said, but because of what she refused to become. Leah handed her a phone. "Every sponsor has confirmed cancellation. Media requests are flooding in. Do you want to speak to Vogue first?" Janelle's answer was immediate. "No, let them wait. Let them think." Tonight wasn't for them. The crowd parted again as she descended the final step. Reporters leaned in, desperate for one last soundbite, one final line to headline tomorrow's news. Janelle paused, turned toward the sea of cameras and spoke with quiet precision. "This industry teaches women like me that we must shout to be heard. I built a company to prove we don't. You don't need to raise your voice to raise the standard. You just have to own the room, and when the room disrespects you, own the building." The words hit like a symphony's final chord, measured, complete, inevitable. Leah smiled through tears. "They'll never forget that." "Good," Janelle said softly. "Maybe next time they'll remember before they laugh." In the distance, the skyline glowed. The billboards once filled with Kira Beaumont's designs now dark, waiting for new names, new stories. Janelle glanced up at them. "Leave them blank for now," she murmured. "Let people feel the silence." Naomi wiped her eyes. "What happens next?" Janelle turned toward her, that calm authority returning to her voice. "We rebuild. But this time we build rooms where dignity isn't dress code. It's the foundation." They started walking toward the waiting car. Each step echoed softly against the pavement, the same rhythm that had followed her all night. Steady, deliberate, undefeated. As she reached the door, Malik called out one last question. "Ms. Rhodes, what do you call what happened tonight?" She paused, one hand on the doorframe, city lights dancing in her eyes. "Not revenge," she said. Just balance. The car door closed with a quiet finality. The camera flashes dimmed, and in that hush that followed, the crowd didn't cheer. They simply stood, letting the weight of the moment settle into memory. Up above, the pavilion lights flickered once, as if bowing in respect. Then they went dark, and in the city that never sleeps, justice finally stood, radiant, graceful, and utterly awake.